Okay, here we go again. Right underneath the laundry room. Very high production values. Part 2. Got my script again. See how it goes. All right, welcome to part 2 of the epic saga of Jovan Hutton Pulitzer and the 2020 election. In part 1, I gave you a little bit of background on this guy. He describes himself as an inventor, but he's really more of a reinventor than an inventor. He reinvented himself as a crystal salesman in 2003 after the Q-Cat flopped. By 2012, he was commander of Treasure Force, and then he wiggled his way onto the Curse of Oak Island TV program in 2014. By 2016, following his embarrassment in Swordgate, he moved on from the lost history shtick and started doing something in healthcare, detecting cancer with, And then after the 2020 election, of course, he popped up as an election expert. Cue the monorail clip.
I give you the Springfield Monorail.
So I know from personal experience that lying is one of Pulitzer's main skill sets. So it really seems inevitable in hindsight that he ended up participating in the big lie. The earliest evidence of his involvement that I have seen so far is a signed affidavit from December 9th, 2020 that was part of an amicus brief in a lawsuit to get Maricopa County, Arizona to release the paper ballots from the 2020 election. More about that later. In this episode, I'm going to talk about Pulitzer's testimony to a Georgia Senate committee on December 30th, 2020, where he claimed to be a pattern recognition expert who could very quickly use existing technology to scan the mail-in ballots from Fulton County, Georgia, and root out all kinds of evidence of fraud. So Pulitzer's presentation is about 45 minutes long, and it is chock full of vintage Pulitzer baloney. First, let's watch a bit of his conclusion. Though he claims at the very beginning of his presentation to not have any interest in what the outcome is.
I personally do not care how this comes down, but I do care about the vote being counted.
By the end of his presentation, he is ranting about ballots being scanned through multiple times.
And you will see what got run over and over and over and over again.
It's clear that he already has his conclusion, and he is just looking to convince the committee that he's the guy that can prove the Democrats cheated. But even the Republicans that want to believe him don't. And this is very clear in kind of the two main interactions in the presentation, and we're going to look at each of them one at a time. Example number 1. The first place Pulitzer gets himself into trouble is when he shows 2 example ballots from different precincts in Fulton County and implies that there is some sinister reason that the ballots are different. Along with each ballot, he provides information about voting behavior that he claims goes with each precinct. One of the ballots is from a Democrat-leaning precinct, and the other is from a Republican-leaning precinct. The problem, which is quickly noticed by one of the senators, is that the information given for the supposed Republican-leaning precinct doesn't match the ballot. Let's listen to this exchange. It's totally worth it to just let it play for a little while so you can understand what's going on here.
This is a Fulton County ballot. You can see the voting area of Fulton County on this one. We referred to it as O8L. It narrows down to Roswell, Georgia. So here you're looking at a ballot in Fulton County. This particular county, not according to my data, but according to public data, says 67.7% of the people voted Democrat. I'm just pointing this out so you understand. I use traditional coding, the blue for the Democrat side, the red for the Republican side. Let's take a look at the next ballot, please. This is a ballot for Buckhead, Georgia. This particular one says that 69.2% voted for the Republican Party, right? This one is what we call our R ballot. Will you roll back to the first one? Look at the top right corner of that ballot in the block that says Fulton County. Now go to the next ballot. Look at the top right corner right there that says Roswell or Buckhead. Why is there not a tracking code in that ballot? That's the code that makes it cross-checked to the signature. Why is it absent? There are a lot of these inconsistencies in these ballots, and they run along party lines. Next slide, please. So here's the sample. Yes, sir, you have a question?
Yes. Help me understand something. Can you go back up just a little bit?
If you'll come a little closer to the microphone, I'll hear you. Sorry.
When we're looking at, I'm just watching across Buckhead, Georgia, on your left side, Morgan County. I just want to make sure we're comparing apples and apples. Is there something here that's off with the data? Because it looks like we're talking about Buckhead, Georgia on your left side and Fulton County, which would be the neighborhood of Buckhead on your right side.
I'm actually showing you the two ballots and what they relate to. I don't program that. I don't write that. That's in your servers. That's what your state says. So I am serving you back according to the coding on this ballot right up in the corner of what it says it relates to.
So on the left side, did our servers make the left side of your screen that says politics and voting Buckhead?
The left side is actually the public data you can pull based on neighborhoods and areas, based on the propensity of how they voted
And then
in
the
past
bottom-
elections.
The bottom is Morgan County, Georgia, but we're using the Fulton ballot. So I'm just making sure that.
I'm just giving you examples of the general areas, right? So you understand how they break down. This is the only breakdown that's available,
Right.
And when you put in that precinct and that zip code, this is the only information available.
My question is, though, while I support your end premise, I believe, I'm concerned your data may not be the accurate data.
That's awesome, because that's not the data I'm even referring to.
Okay.
Let's get to the ballot and talk about the exact ballot, because here's why. I'm not the webmaster for this, neither are you. I'm not the webmaster for that, neither are you. I can throw that off the slide, and we can focus on the ballot instead of what doesn't matter. Here's what matters.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering, because I'm afraid that your boxes refer to a different county, so I'm wondering.
I'm referring to the ballot.
Okay.
And if you want to
helps.
continue to refer to the ballot, I will show you the ballot.
That would help.
Might I invite you to ignore every footnote that goes with the ballot, only focus on the ballot.
Okay.
Right? Then we'll focus on the same exact thing.
Then we could still be talking. Okay, that's what I was wondering is if.
That's all we're talking about. We're only talking about here, Georgia ballots. So if you look at this ballot here, you can confirm on your own what district that comes from. You can see it right underneath there, right?
And have nothing to do with the presentation, the box on the left and the box at the
No, the
bottom.
boxes have to do to give you some reference to what outside sources say about where the ballot area is.
That's not the right ballot area.
I would suggest you submit that to the webmaster that does this for the state. I don't program it. I don't say it. And do me a favor. Will you scroll down? No, scroll down. Cover up that bottom. Now, if you look at the screen, let's look at the ballot. Don't get distracted in anything else.
Okay.
That might not even be the right red for the Republican Party or the right blue for the Democrat Party. But let's look at the ballot, may we? In fact, if you'll blow it up so big,
Yeah, that would help.
if you'll just blow it up so big that people who can't connect the dots will get it, let's just look at the ballot, right? This is called simple. Let's go even further. They might get distracted by the left side. There you go. That is so fat and so big you cannot miss. We're talking about the ballot. Do you agree? Okay.
I do.
And I'm not going to roll up to the bottom so nobody gets concerned. So let's look at the differences between the two. You see the code on the right?
He's talking about.
That barcode?
Okay.
Let's scroll back to the other one. Please be very careful not to show any other data to confuse people. Let's go up. There we go. Keep on going. And now let's look at the right side of the ballot. See that? There's no code there. Okay?
Where it would be right there. Okay, that's the point. Okay.
Yeah, so there's no code there. Can we agree on that?
Yes.
Side to side. Okay. I didn't print this ballot. I do not assign the districts. I only look at the ballots. This is what the ballot says. Let's go into the next slide, please. Okay. Again, you can discard the information at the bottom if it confuses you. We have
Sir, can I stop you for a
We have a
second?
yes.
Do you mind if I show you? It's not confusing. I want to show you what I was saying.
It's not. I'm only talking about the ballot. I got it. I understand completely what you're
Okay.
saying. I'm only talking about the physical ballot. On that, we agree.
Okay, good deal. That's I was
100%.
wanting to make sure that we were on the same.
100%. I think
Okay.
we're all on the same page. So please, let's zoom up so there's no confusion.
The senator has correctly surmised that Pulitzer has confused the town of Buckhead, which is in Morgan County, with the neighborhood of Buckhead, which is in Fulton County in Atlanta. Here's where Buckhead, the town, is, and here is where Buckhead, the neighborhood, is. So this kind of sloppiness is a great way to convince an audience that you have no idea what you're talking about. And Pulitzer is a master of this. Sloppy, sloppy, sloppy. I used to be able to tell when he wrote something just because of the typos. It's it's the forensic fingerprint of J. Hutton Pulitzer. It's all over this. So anyway, the voting data from Buckhead, the town, and Morgan County is completely irrelevant to understanding a ballot from Fulton County. This is easily sorted out, of course, by looking up the precinct numbers that are on the ballots. We can determine where in Fulton County these ballots came from, and we can look at those precinct numbers and see what the past voting behavior of the populations in those precincts was.
Here's a map of Fulton County. I got this from GIS, available online. Each of the little polygons in here is one of the voting precincts. So I have highlighted the two. This is the RW01 and this is the 08L. Oh, here you go. Wikipedia to the rescue again. So you can see the outlines of Fulton County here. Boy, guys, the more I got into this, the more I realized that Pulitzer shit the bed on this one. Even worse than it seems like at first blush. So I found the Fulton County GIS voting district map viewer. You can click on these little sections here and see what they are. So you can see we're at precinct 08C. So we need to find 08L. 08L. Okay. So there's 08L, which is down here very near where the dot for Buckhead showed up on the Wikipedia map. And then guess what? You can go up here to Roswell. There's Roswell 01. So not only did he confuse the Buckhead neighborhood with Buckhead, Georgia, which is in Morgan County that way on the map, but the RW01, which he had confused with Buckhead, is actually in Roswell, and the 08L is the one that would actually be Buckhead. So he made two layers of errors there. The data that he puts along with these ballots is absolutely irrelevant and makes no sense because he cannot get even the most basic facts in line. It is... I don't even know where to begin. You know, I taught for a while, and as a teacher, it's part of your job to make a judgment about what grade people deserve for the effort that they put in and the accuracy of their work. F. It's an F. Like it's not even close. So he got voter information from a town called Buckhead that was over here somewhere. And at first it looked like he had confused that with the Buckhead neighborhood, which is down here. But the ballot that it went with was the Roswell neighborhood, which is up here, which is why it's called RW, because it's Roswell. The 08L is the Buckhead one, and that one is the one that's actually more democratic leaning. If I were going to testify in front of the Senate, I would make sure that my example was correct. He could not even do that. And this is a guy who goes on and on and on about how things have to be exact and perfect and machines and the wrong answer. And he's an expert. I'm amazed he can get up and tie his shoes in the morning. Honestly, ridiculous. If I was in that Senate chamber, I mean, those guys, you know, to their credit, asked some questions and didn't let him off the hook and eventually just let him finish up and got him out of there. But I wouldn't give him the time of day after this. And I don't know whether Georgia did or not, or whether he convinced anyone, but anybody who after seeing that kind of performance would defer to his quote unquote expertise and his abilities has got to be out of their effing mind. Out of their effing mind. Sorry. Terrible. So we can get into the details about those two precincts because we can identify them correctly by number. There we go. Here's a spreadsheet from Fulton County. So these are the election results from 2016. Table of contents here. President of the United States, page 2. Total vote for Trump is in column I. Total vote for Hillary Clinton is in column P. There's 08L, so column I. So 751 votes Trump, 1688 Clinton. So definitely a Democrat-leaning precinct there. And we can go to RW01, and we've got 2,034 votes for Trump and 1,253 votes for Clinton. So a Republican-leaning district there. These were the data that he should have gone with if he wanted to try to make a point. However, you can see how many districts there are in Fulton County. So it starts at line 4 and goes down to line 349. So over 340 precincts. Being the pattern recognition expert that he claims he is, one would want to show a pattern of differences in the ballots, but instead he chooses one example and he botches it.
This is vintage Pulitzer, as is his inability to ever acknowledge a mistake and get himself out of a situation like this with any amount of grace. That's something that is definitely not in his skill set. He clearly made multiple slides with the wrong information on them, and he got up and presented them in front of a committee. He couldn't admit his mistake because then he doesn't look like the genius that he claims to be. So he ends up coming off looking like an even bigger idiot than if he had said, whoops, that's an error. You know, Hutton, smart people can spot this stuff a mile away. Politicians aren't necessarily all smart people, but these guys are not dummies. They spotted you. They made you from the second you got up there at that podium. Even though they wanted to believe you, you couldn't even pull this off in front of a sympathetic audience. All right, and then Pulitzer expresses even more concern that the ballots are different.
Why is the ballot from one county on the left, why does it have a completely separate code in it than the one on the right? These are actually coded to where they come from. Why should you be able to look at a ballot and know whether it came from a Republican area or a Democratic area? This concerns me.
One reason ballots are different, of course, is that people vote for different local races in different precincts. Not everybody has the same, dog catcher or state representative or whatever.
He makes a big stink out of why the ballots could possibly be different. All you need to do is look at the table of contents to figure that out. 340 odd precincts in Fulton County, they are not going to be the same. People who live in northern Fulton County and central Fulton County and southern Fulton County are going to have different slates of state representatives. Look at them all. Look at all the different state representatives, starting at line 24, going down to line 48. So 24, some different state representatives. Soil and water, Johns Creek bond referendum, City of Milton bond. So people who live in the City of Milton or Johns Creek are going to be able to vote on referendums that people who live in other parts of Fulton County are not. So every ballot is going to be different. And for the machine to know what the little filled in circle means, it needs to know which district it is. So my guess is that that's what those codes are for, and that's why they're different. And there is nothing at all sinister about it. But I'm not the elections expert. It seemed like it would be up to the elections expert to be able to explain that and understand that. But he can't even get the simple fact right about where the actual ballot came from, even though it's all freely available online for anybody to see.
If there were 10 people in the room, you lost 8 of them at that point. But let's move on to example 2. So Pulitzer's next argument is that, what do I have here? Differences in the apparent alignment of his 2 sample ballots, again, we're still on the 2 sample ballots, are part of some kind of sinister plan. Did he only have 2? Where did he get these sample ballots? How come he couldn't figure out where the one was from? I don't know. It looks to me like by alignment that he's actually talking about how closely one side of the ballot is aligned to the other. Like it looks like his images are that he held the ballot up to the light and shined a light through it and said, look, the X on this side doesn't match up with the X on that side. He doesn't give any other explanation, so maybe that's it. So one of the senators questions Pulitzer about these alignment issues and scanning and how scanners work, and during the course of his question, he reveals that he himself has an extensive background in this kind of scanning. So you can tell after a little bit of the back and forth that Pulitzer understands that he is cooked on this question also, that he's not going to get away with this one. So he quickly pivots, and then he goes on to filibuster for like 5 minutes about other kinds of stuff, changing the subject. So redirect. It's worth listening to this exchange. So get yourself a drink. This is a long one.
Those hash marks on the top and bottoms, all of those are citing communication and adjustment devices. Let me give you an example. Long before computers talked with programs, they talked with paper. They punched little holes in paper, and that's what programming. That's what you're looking at. That's the paper basically telling the machines to program itself. Yes?
So the marks along the left hand and the right, the vertical square boxes, they create horizontal lines or regions on the ballot.
It's only an outside adjustment. It does not create a line.
But for scanning purposes, optically, when it gets to a square, to a black box on the vertical edges, it creates a scanning area across the ballot horizontally.
That's not the actual description of what it creates.
I can describe it maybe another way. If you take that ballot right there and you print it out, and you take a straight edge and you draw from the top of the box on the left side to the top of the box on the right side, the bottom of the box on the left side to the bottom of the box on the right side, you create a series of horizontal lines.
You can connect these like a grid, yes, sir.
And you can do the same from top to bottom.
Correct, sir.
So the width of the box on the left and the right has nothing to do with anything other. The width has nothing to do. It could be 1/8 of an inch wide or 1 inch wide. It still creates 1/8 of an inch wide scanning region across.
Untrue.
Okay.
I understand what you're saying, but the signature of the ink creates something different. You can't, well, here you go. I'll give you a simple test. Take a $1 bill out of your pocket. Take a $5 bill out of your pocket, cut off the 5, put it on the 1, run it through your snack machine out there, see what happens. It's all going to be the same size. It's all going to be the same markers. It's all going to be the same detection things, but that's going to kick it back because the computer must see it exactly. So you can do this own test yourself, right? It has to be exact. We, in the human world, we deal with variables all the time. That's what we're talking about in ballots. Oh, we heard it. Oh, I think that's a vote for this guy. When somebody else says, no, it's a vote for this guy. What you just described was an opinion, a variable. Machines don't operate that way. Machines have hard, absolute fact rules.
Yeah, I know you don't know me. I'm actually an electrical engineer myself and have designed coin and currency processing equipment and dealt with currency scanners, so I know a whole lot about how they work. All I'm saying is all the little ovals on that ballot are lined up in that grid.
Well, are we talking about the ovals or are we talking about the hash marks on the side?
I'm talking about the ovals are lined up with those.
The ovals have an exact location on the paper. We use all of those hash marks, top to bottom, left to right, to find out where that is.
So,
let's share some common technology or terminology if it helps us communicate here. Number one, regardless to the machine, I don't care about the machine. I don't want to run another ballot through a machine. That's why we're here. So I do not care about how the machine reads it and what you're doing. I care about getting to the physical ballot. So in our world of what we're doing, which you'll understand this as a mechanical engineer, I've now said, I don't care about the machine. So now all those rules went right out the door. What I'm talking about is that piece of paper. What we do is we use those hash marks for something different. And those hash marks for something different are basically what we do when we look at the ballot. So this is the arena with no regard to what it was to do in the machine. We call it the stadium, the arena. Then when you go to the presidential area, we call that the football field. That one happens to be the Super Bowl field, I think we can agree. And you have other ones that are the state and college and local levels. And then all of them have a game ball and play. I have no regard for the smoke and mirrors of how the machines work, the hidden stuff in the code, or how this machine's supposed to be programmed. If the machine worked according to programming, none of us would be standing here. We're here because something broke. And so I'm saying, I don't care about the machine. I don't even care about the code that was written in the machine. What I care about is that physical artifact. And you know what? That physical artifact has material differences from district to district that should not be there. Now, we can all talk about, well, it's scan lines and it's this. You know, as a mechanical engineer, that doesn't create a scan line, period. That's not what creates the scan line. So, bottom line is we have differences in ballots that shouldn't be there. Why are they there? That's why I said earlier, I'm not talking about code, because that's how this process gets derailed. That's how the smoke and mirrors happens and nobody's get to it. Please, let's go to the bottom. So we use that as the stadium, and we have the football field, and we have the ovals. We're only looking for it, and let's keep on going forward. Here's what does matter. You as a mechanical engineer can understand this. There's the sighting device. That is the item that tells the optical eye, technically, although in mechanical engineering speak, it's not a singular eye anymore, but we'll just use that as an example. That's telling the sighting device where to look. You, as a mechanical engineer, knowing forensic, knowing dollars, writing codes, doing whatever, you yourself know that when it doesn't line up, The machine doesn't work the way it's supposed to work. It's the difference between pulling your dollar bill out like this and looking at it, pulling the same dollar bill but doing it cross-eyed. One of them doesn't make sense. One of them doesn't look at the same thing the other thing does. That's why this paper is a piece of code. So we don't care about the scan lines. We don't care about the resolution. We don't care about any of that. We care about the piece of paper. And if you're looking at the bullseye, can we draw that up and try to keep them both in frame? Just the targets on the bottom. There you go. If we're looking at the bullseye, the very thing that says, hey, look here. Well, the left one's saying, look in my yard, and the right one's saying, look 2 houses over. But you know what? The ovals never moved because they were printed hard. So even as a mechanical engineer or photography or optics or camera, when you expect to take a picture and you hold it at somebody, you're not trying to photograph 2 people over. And this is what it tells the machine to do. This is a problem at the most lowest elementary level. And the number one way it's cloaked, well, we can't see it in the code. We don't know how it's done. Show me the code that does it. Well, that's the code. That's the code. Any printer industry executive, any monetary printing executive, any engineer in the world that deals with printing will tell you this simple fact. If your machine is not calibrated to hit the target, it becomes something else. So if we talk about machines and we talk about code, it is a smoke and mirrors not to deal with what's real and physical. Here's my contention. This is the historical artifact of a voter. And states are telling voters, you have no right to that. The very voter that pays your salary, that paid for that ballot, that paid for that piece of paper, and paid for the machine that you're running it in. And so those people that pay your salary, that you work for and do this for, you're telling them you can't look at them. That is both unacceptable and un-American. What I'm saying is all of these problems you've heard today can be corrected and detected now by the simplest of things. It takes you days or weeks to recount votes. Give me these 500,000 ballots. We'll have them done in 2 hours. How can you complain? What is there to hide with the physical artifact of the human interaction that is putting people in office? That is unacceptable, un-American, and to talk about it any other way is smoke and mirrors, is geek gobbledygook. We want to know if these ballots are authentic or counterfeit. We want to make sure every vote is verified. This is not about President Donald J. Trump or President-elect Joe Biden. This is about, are we still a country where your vote matters? One person, one vote. If you refuse to allow the ballots to be examined, the ballots, not the smoke and mirrors, but the ballots, let the machine look at it, not the voting machine that already messed up. Machines do what you tell them. You just have it look at that and verify the vote. There's only one element that will do that. The historical artifact of the people of the United States of America, and here, the people of the state of Georgia. They trusted you that this was right. They trusted you that your vote would matter. They trusted you, I have a voice and I want my voice counted. That is only that piece of paper. It is unforgivable for somebody to be able to audit something and then the original one disappears. How convenient. You know, if you did it in your company as a mechanical engineer and you had your CPA do it or your financial guy, you'd fire them. And that's just one little bitty company. But yet we accept this as a nation? Unacceptable, un-American. So our technology can answer every bit of these. If you want to roll up, I don't even know if there's any more.
So that's another trademark Pulitzer tactic. When you are caught, change the subject, move on, and just keep talking so nobody else can get a word in. And I experienced him doing this dozens of times. Never acknowledge a mistake. It's very Trump-like in a way. You never acknowledge, even when you were caught red-handed, you just change the subject and start talking about something else till everybody else starts talking about that subject. You know the type, loud as a motorbike, but wouldn't bust a grape in a fruit fight. I don't know if anyone in the room was still with him after this exchange, but a normal, reasonable person, which these senators seem like they're asking normal, reasonable, good questions to me, would have headed for the exits at this point if they hadn't already watching this train wreck. This is not the guy. This is not the guy you want to go with. It's amazing that people keep falling for it, but they do. But they do. And before I close the video out, I want to talk about a couple other things that he said during this presentation.
Here's what I have a problem with: is simplest state. This is the county's statement on ballots. Went out on national TV. We had 113,130 votes at the time, and we had to adjudicate 106,000 of them. You know what that's really saying? Your machine didn't work. When the national average for the last elections, 2016, was what? 1.2%. That's an audited number. 1.2% of the total had to be adjudicated. And then you look at 2018, nationally, 2.7%. But yet your own election officials said we had to do this 93.6% of the time. Let me decode that for you. Mr. Mechanical Engineer, your machine doesn't work.
It's amazing that people keep falling for it, but they do. But they do.
Now an update on the vote in Fulton County, Georgia, which is home to Atlanta. So far, President Trump holds a slim lead against Joe Biden in the state of Georgia, but a winner remains to be declared.
So far we've scanned 113,130 ballots. We've adjudicated over 106,000. Those have been published on the site.
So that's the quote right there. We've scanned 113,000. We've adjudicated over 106,000. If that's where you stop watching this, you might think, oh, that's a really high number. Something is really off there, which is what he does. If you watch the rest of it, you will see, Richard Barron doesn't do a great job of explaining, but he does explain what he means. There's a difference between going to adjudication and individual ballots being adjudicated. That 106,000 number does not refer to the number of individual ballots being adjudicated. It refers to the number of ballots that go in batches through the adjudication process, which includes pulling out the individual ballots for adjudication, which actually total less than 1% of all the ballots that are going through. So let's just watch it, and I will stop after he says that. You can figure that out. And again, any reasonable, sincere person watching this who wanted to understand what was going on would understand that that's what he is talking about, and not try to make hay out of it like our friend Jovan Hutton Pulitzer does.
To the scanner, we send them over to English Street. There's a vote review panel over there, and we're adjudicating them from there. The only ballots that are adjudicated are if we have a ballot with a contest on it in which there's some question as to how the computer reads it. So the vote review panel then determines voter intent.
So you see the difference? They send all the ballots to adjudication, and then the ballots that are adjudicated are the ones that have that meet those special criteria of needing human intervention, which is a smaller subset of the total number of ballots.
We're probably close. We have somewhere near 142,000 that we'll be at the end of the process. We've scanned 113,130 as of moments ago. We've adjudicated 106,000 plus of those. The 106,000, those have already been published on the website. We're going to run more frequent batch updates over to English Street so we can get those, the vote review panel to update those, to go through those and adjudicate those so we can get more updates throughout the night.
So right there, when he's talking about the 106,000, the 142,000 is the total votes. So all the votes are going through what he is kind of sloppily calling adjudication, which is they scan them and then they go to a place where they are dealt with, the ones that need to be dealt with, and that's adjudication. But not every single ballot is adjudicated to ascertain voter intent, just the ones that are kind of kicked out.
Well, right now we're up to 106,000 on the, up from 74,000 yesterday. We're up to 106,000 on our way to, it'll be somewhere near, in the neighborhood of 142,000. No, well, no, but you can't publish a batch until that batch goes through adjudication. Because what it does, any ballots in there that are flagged to be adjudicated by the vote review panel, those have to be dealt with before you can publish that batch. So the vote review panel will go through and they'll see any contest that's on a ballot that has some question as to the way it was marked. The vote review panel then decides voter intent.
So that's when a ballot is adjudicated. So the batch goes, let's say a batch, just for the sake of example, is 100. The 100 ballots get scanned. That batch of 100 goes to quote unquote adjudication. And then the 1 or 2 ballots, which in this case is about the right number, that need to be adjudicated to ascertain voter intent, those are dealt with. And then the whole entire batch is published. So then, in Richard Barron's terminology, that batch of 100 would have been adjudicated. So that's where the large number comes from. It's not the number of ballots that is actually being adjudicated by hand. It's the number that have gone through the adjudication stage where adjudication would happen. Again, any sincere person who is trying to understand what is going on rather than to score a point with a lot of fast talk and lip service would have watched that whole entire interview and understood exactly what Richard Barron was saying. We can go, there are data now on the actual number of adjudications. So I found this, Fulton County, Georgia, from the Ballot Assure website. Adjudication analysis from May of 2024. On election day, 528,000 cast votes, 5,158 adjudicated ballots. So that's about 1%. Various rumors circulating about the adjudication process. This report aims to provide clarity based on the data. There have been claims that as many as 100,000 ballots were adjudicated in Fulton County. Given the significance of such a number, this report investigates its accuracy. And that's what this report came up with, that the number is around 1%, which is in line with previous elections, if not lower. I don't know. I forget what Pulitzer has on his slide. But that claim is nonsense. That all these things were kicked out because of some, what he's implying is that there was some code that they were able to kick out the Republican ones and adjudicate them and say, no, this is actually a Biden vote, and switch votes that way. That's what he's implying, and that's a bunch of garbage. Total garbage. Moving on.
And finally, there is the usual amount of Pulitzer puffery sprinkled throughout this presentation.
I've spent the last 24 years in understanding how papers and machine and internet interact. I spent the last 6 years almost understanding the paper reading details at the nano level. I can tell you what paper came from China. I can tell you the person that handled it was a smoker. All of it is detectable with the physical ballot. So yes, 24 years doing this, the last 6 years doing it in the new field of science, looking at it at the nano level. And in case you can't tell, I can get really technical and deep and geeky, but I try not to because this is simple. Simple.
Well, we're going to need to move on to thank you for your presentation.
Thank you.
I need to move on.
So I guess he forgot about the time that he spent selling crystals and rainwater and dressing up as Indiana Jones and pretending to be a successful treasure hunter, and all of the books that he wrote about all the treasure legends in each state that he's very, very proud of. All those things happened within the last 30 years also, and as far as I know, don't have anything to do with the pattern recognition expertise. But he doesn't want to talk about that stuff because that doesn't help him, which is the reason why he took as much of his lost history stuff off the internet as he could, because he is rightfully embarrassed about it. He put a lot of effort and energy into that. He got himself on TV, and he made himself look like a complete and utter moron to anybody who was paying attention. So later on, what I guess was that same day, Pulitzer makes another very brief appearance in Georgia where he dramatically declares that his team has hacked into the voting system and they are in at that moment. And I think I'm going to save that for the third video, because that particular claim got a pretty spicy response from the Georgia Secretary of State. And so that is where we will pick up next time. Have a good weekend. I still need like some kind of tag phrase at the end. If you didn't know, now you know. I got nothing. If you don't know, now you know. If you didn't know, now you know. How about, you're welcome, world. You're welcome.